Experience with my dad, non-existent. 32 years old when I got a random call one day. John, like my father?
You tell me. How is it that you're able to recognize and own that, hey, look, this is how I need to maneuver with my own kids and not become what I experienced?
Carl always had this way of dealing with his children. 80 to 85% of the time I feel like I'm failing.
It was just a warm up for you, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a warm up. All right, guys, welcome to I can't. We're laughing because I forgot to hit record. So technically, this is the second take that you guys are watching. Here we go.
Okay.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Damn Good Dad podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bailey, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Patrick Buchanan. He is arguably the greatest friend a man could have, some would say. He's a father, he is a brother, a husband, an entrepreneur, and all things good. So it's my esteemed pleasure to welcome you to the show, welcome you to this episode. I want to start by saying, like, I'm grateful for your time. I literally dragged him in off the street. Like, he was on the road today working, doing a couple of different things, and I had an empty slot, and I was like, hey, look, come and do this episode. I definitely want to have a conversation with you. And it worked out that he was free and he was able to come through and do this today. So Patrick, welcome to the show.
Man, listen, first of all, anything for you, my brother. I'm here for you 100%. And I appreciate being here.
Of course, man. Awesome. Look, man, today's episode, I want you to be as authentic as you can, where, as much as you feel comfortable to do so. We are talking about touchy subjects such as our past, our upbringing, different things of that nature. So I want you to feel comfortable to share as much as you want or don't want. But I want you to be you and share your story. So,
of course.
Before I get into the main topic of what today is really about and today's discussion is about, I really want to give people a little more insight to you and who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, just growing up? Like, what was it like with your dad? What was it like with your parents? What was that like experience like for you?
Experience with my dad, non-existent. That's literally the best word to use. Completely non-existent. I feel like that has also shaped who I am.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it might, I was 32 years old when I got a random call one day. Thought it was someone else calling and answered the phone, and the person's like, hello? And I say, yeah, hello? Yeah. What's up? I'm good. And I was like, oh. He's like, do you know who you're talking to? No, he didn't say that. He's like, if I did it the right way, he says, hello? I said, hello. Yeah, Wagwan. I'm good.
Nothing much.
Hi, who is this? And we'll just use the word John for lack of a better.
Sure.
John, like my father? Yeah, man, Wagwan.
You tell me. You tell me. Like,
I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, you might have never tell about John. I've heard of you, And I mean, we end up, some months later, I went to Jamaica and we met in person. I was able to meet a lot of my siblings. I am like third in line, which is cool because I've never been a younger brother. Met all my nieces and nephews and such. Really cool kids. Yeah, so we talked. He effectively pinned all of it on my mother as to why it was that he and I never had a relationship. I know there's more backstory there. But yeah, basically it was my mom's fault, this and that, whatever. At the end of the day, the way I've always looked at it, even growing up, I've always said, look, there are people out there who are addicts.
yeah.
They go through the worst of the worst, but they might show up high, but they're going to be there for their kid, and not having even a phone call or a card or just an acknowledgement of my existence in 32 years.
Wow.
I'm sorry. It's just absolutely no, I just can't I can't. But there's a lot more backstory there.
Sure, no, for
Maybe in
sure.
a future podcast we can
If we have
get
time
into
for it, we'll get
we
into
can
it.
dig
Yeah.
into because there's a lot to unpack there. But there's a part of me that sometimes feel like, that when well, I'm 38 now. So what, 6 years ago? And I feel like I've been reabandoned
Okay.
because there's been no effort at all to actually build a relationship. I know that I may have given the cold shoulder, but I feel like it was or it is his responsibility to make a valiant effort to build a relationship with me.
Yeah.
Because I just, the children don't ask to be born into this world. You bring them here, right?
So you said something before you go any further than there, and I think it's right along the lines of what you're talking about now. You talked about the fact that when you got a phone call from a guy you haven't spoken to
Ever.
ever, casually calls you out of the blue. Hey, how's it going? Like how you been? And you're just like, hey, Dad, you ever get that milk or no? Or,
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
but my thing is that, like, you said something along the lines of, like, he pinned everything on your mom and blamed her for it. As men, do you find that it's, or even as a dad specifically, do you find that it's hard to take ownership of things? Like, do you think that's something that we were supposed to be taught by our dads?
Yes, it is something we should have been taught, but I I feel like I do take ownership.
Yeah.
I do, and I recognize and realize a lot of things that young people go through, and I try my best to apply that with my own children. And I want them to know that they are loved. I want them to know that they can talk to me about anything. And when I'm wrong, I have no problem saying up to them, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it that way. Here's the right way it should have been done. Because I mean, there's moments where I fly off the handle. I do things that are not right, and I know how to go back to them as young as they are and say, hey, you know what? Daddy was wrong. And this is what you should do. This is how you should apply it, right? And it's not a matter of do as I say, not as I do. It's a matter of training and teaching and showing them the right way, because a lot of times, we apply how we are scarred from our own situations
Yeah.
into like real life application. And there are times where we have to recognize, and when we do recognize within ourselves that we've done it the wrong way, to go back and to say, no, son, this is the way, because I have all boys.
Yeah.
So it is important and crucial
Ironic.
to me, right? It's crucial to me to train up these young men, these young boys, to be the men they need to be in the future. Will I succeed? Time will tell.
Yeah.
How they're going to turn out? Time will tell. But I trust that God is giving me the right amount of wisdom and knowledge and right amount of patience to balance it out and to fight for them, fight with them,
Yeah.
and to bring them to the place where He needs them to be in their life.
It's also interesting you said that, because and this seems to be a trend with everybody who's been on the show thus far, who grew up without a father, right? They're on the show obviously for a reason.
Yeah.
I deem people who I interview to be people who are good dads, or damn good dads, or at least making the attempt to be that, right? And I always wondered to myself, if you grew up the way that you grew up, right, with your relationship with your dad and lacking whatever, how is it that you're able to recognize and own that, hey, look, this is how I need to maneuver for my own kids and not become what I experienced?
Well, first of all, let me say this. The relationship I have with my mother is top tier. There's no other person in my life that has impacted me and shown me the amount of love that, my mom is aces. She's 100% the queen of my heart. Like I love her with everything I have inside of me, and my grandmother equally. My aunts have been amazing. Van and Brown Daly, Dr. Maxine James France. Like, there's so many people who have impacted my life, women who have impacted my life. And I think, kudos to these women, because a lot of what they've done was not only just mother me or just kind of show me how to interact with women, but they have always instilled in me that this is how it's done, as a man. This is your rightful place.
Wow.
There are influential men that I have in my life as well who I can go to for advice. But I think following the principles that are taught to us in the Bible, that a man is supposed to lead. He's supposed to take charge. He's supposed to lead his family to worship. He's supposed to do these certain things. right? You know, I've kind of come into, you know, I feel like that place where God needed me to be for this period of time. I actually forgot the initial question.
That's okay. That's all right.
But it just felt like that was needed to be said in that moment, right? But I think you asked me, how do I know?
Like where do you get that from? Where do you learn
So
to be a good dad if you didn't
in my
have an
younger
example?
years,
Yeah.
there were two specific fathers that that were very influential to me. Actually, three of them, if I'm going to be honest. One was the dad on Family Matters,
Yeah. Carl
Carl
Winslow.
Winslow.
Carl's Winslow, man.
The second
Got my haircut
was
based off of him.
Philip Banks, Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Always. Bro, we've talked about him in so many episodes
Yeah.
already.
And the last one, Danny from Full House.
Was it really?
Danny was a dad, right? Yeah.
Danny Tanner, I
Danny
believe.
Tanner, yeah.
Yeah.
Full House. And there was something about each of them that I feel like I embodied. Carl always had this way of dealing with his children where there was grace, there was love.
Yeah.
You know, there was respect for them, their individuality. And but he knew how to be that guy. Even the way he dealt with his wife a lot of times, how he spoke to her, how they went through things, the wife's sister, you know, and all that stuff.
Rachel, yep.
You know, and you know, even how sometimes he dealt with Urkel, like just watching how he basically fathered him from a distance.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a disdain there, but he fathered him.
Yeah.
If you really pay attention, you really watch the trajectory of the show, he fathered him. And I think that opened me up to being this person where I've never been afraid then to accept and bring in any young man, no matter what their walk of life is and no matter where they came from or what their experience was, to be as influential as I can, to the same values I instill in my own children, I instill in them and teach them the same way and treat them as if they're one of mine. And I've done that with a lot of young men. But and then when we look at Philip Banks, like, listen, I mean, Philip Banks, when you're a kid, you're looking at him like, yo, I want to be that guy. Like,
Are you serious? I was terrified of him.
Nah, man.
In a way of like a respect. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid he's gonna kill me. It's like, this guy, he's the alpha male. He's taking charge of his household. He's doing the things that a dad's supposed to do, and he commands that respect. And that, you know what I mean? So like, yeah.
And he was rich.
That was good. That was a plus. It was a plus.
You know, but watching, and if you really pay attention, all four of those kids in that house had absolutely different personalities. Will was the outgoing, fun, rebel type. Carlton was the astute, you know, type. And he was a suck up. And he was a daddy's boy.
For sure. For sure.
Right? Ashley, absolute, she just, there was just something about Ashley.
She was a sweetheart.
She was.
Yeah.
You know, she was a daddy's girl, but kind of the rebel, right? She was kind of in between. Hillary was just, you know, she.
I feel like Ashley was a smarter version of Will. Because Ashley did things on the low that you would look like, wait, like Will had to go save her like once or twice.
Yes.
And it was just like, but she was smart about what she was doing.
100%.
She's a woman. That's what
100%.
We're just
and
dumb.
so, yeah, Hillary was just like, I think, like what every dad imagines their daughter would be in some way. Like, you know, I mean, she had her flaws.
I was like, wait, spoiled and
in the sense that if you have a daddy's girl and you want to be dad to your girl, it's like, you know, and I don't really have girls, so in my mind I can just imagine that, like, I'd probably spoil my daughter rotten, you know.
I think most men kind of have that sentiment.
I mean, I spoil my boys. I do. I spoil them with intent and dignity, right? And you know, a sense of pride.
What does
right?
that mean?
Hey,
Okay, all right.
We'll explain it.
It makes more sense when we don't ask questions, right?
Yeah.
I got you.
Don't judge me.
No judgment, man. No judgment.
But yeah, and the way he navigated and managed all of that just spoke to me. And then, of course, Danny, the single dad thing, man, listen, I can't even, you know, imagine what it would be like, you know, to lose my loved one, right? My wife, and then have to do this whole single dad thing and master it the way that he did, you know? And again, there were pitfalls, there were ups and downs, but he did a damn good job, you know, maintain that household. And, you know, and it was really kind of three dads, because, right, there was Joey and Jesse. Was Joey's his name? And Jesse, the other two that were there. And just watching how they all navigated raising these girls
Top notch.
spectacular. And so learning and seeing those examples, I always, what it always did for me was, I don't have that. I don't
Yeah.
have that. I want that. Like, I need that, right? And so when I sit down and think about it, like, yo, that's who I want to be like that whenever I have my own family.
Yeah.
And of course, again, there have been some influential men in my life. You know, when I was younger, Uncle Earl, you know, it was, you know, he was very, very, very influential. He taught me how to ride my bike. He was, you know, my mom's boyfriend for a while, and you know, he was there for the formidable years.
Wow.
Absolutely
I
a
didn't know that.
force. Absolutely someone who, you know, took my brother and I, you know, as his own, and you know, to this day, I respect everything about that man. Like, you know, I mean, I don't know why that moment of learning to ride my bike for the first time stuck in my brain. I'll never forget it. He finally let the bike go and I rode it and he had the banana in his hand, like, yes, you did it. And I was like,
Not the
yeah.
banana in his hand.
Yeah. You know, and it was just like, yo, he was like, don't forget to brake. And I was like, what? But like formidable. And he actually taught me to drive. Don't tell him the bike. I was way too young, but he did, you know, and like taught me how to navigate and move the car and things like that. I was way young, right? But, you know, just teaching me a few key things, but I can't forget him. Formidable, definitely. In my adult years, there's been a lot more, you know, my bishop, you know, being one of them, you know, George Clark, you know, Clive Williams, like these people have like, have you know, been in my life, you know, and have done a lot, you know, even, you know, Franklin, you know, as Miss Daly's husband, you know, a lot of influential men, Glenn, Mario. Like if I start naming everybody, it's gonna be a lot to name, right?
Yeah.
But I've taken bits and pieces from each of these influential people, right? And they all mean something to me. They all are important to me, and they all have put something there. So, you know, one could argue that I didn't have a father growing up and I didn't have a male influence or I didn't have a positive influence from a male perspective. But then, you know, the other side of that could be maybe I did in multiple ways more than one, because maybe his bad attributes, I would have adopted them as opposed to
Sure.
just picking out the good ones from multiple different people.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't tell you, but the title of this episode, and I didn't tell you because I just figured it out 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Fathering from a broken place. And that came to me specifically because I realized, you know, going back to the original question, how did you learn to be the man that you are today without having a father? And, you know, you touched on a couple of really important things, I think, at least, that some things I didn't know about. I didn't know about Uncle Earl. It's the first time I'm hearing about that. But that bike situation really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm like, here you are at 38 and you still remember the day, like
Vividly.
moments, like specific details
Vividly.
about
Yes.
when you first learned how to ride a bike because Uncle Earl taught you that.
Yes.
And that right there is a testament to the influence and impact that we have as men
Correct.
on our kids.
Agreed.
And you got to think about this, right? Like like death is a part of life, right? So when someone passes away, we don't think about, oh man, like I remember that one specific instance of whatever. And sometimes we do, sure. There's memories, right? But I feel like more than anything else, we remember how the person made us feel. And I think what you just described was a moment of like, damn, like here's something I've wanted from my dad for so long that I can never get. As a young boy, right? I'm assuming you're probably like 8, 9 around that time frame ish. Maybe a little older.
Like 10, 11, yeah.
All right, cool. You know, you don't realize that at that point in time that you're longing for that.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's called. Well, as adults, we can recognize and understand, but as a child at that age, you don't recognize what you're feeling is that feeling of missing out on that male figure, that father who says, hey, son, this is the way it's supposed to go. Here, let me teach you this thing.
Yeah.
It was his job, right? And here you are now at 11, you're getting that from someone else. It was like, finally,
Yes. Breath of fresh air.
yeah, but and it's just crazy because you don't understand that at that age. You're just thinking, oh man, this is awesome. I learned how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
And at 38, you're just like, no, this man might have saved my marriage. It might have saved me going off the rails and being that type of dad that I never wanted to be. That one instance literally changed the trajectory, at least in my mind, right? In my
No, no,
fantasy,
no, you're right.
it might have very well changed the trajectory that you were set for, just because of that one small moment in time
Agreed.
that you still remember 20
Agreed.
plus years later.
Like I'm literally like whenever I think about it, like I can see it clear as day. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So, fathering from a broken place, right? At this stage of your life, you're 38. You've got 3 boys. Your oldest is what, 8?
Preston is 9.
9.
It's gonna
Good
be
Lord.
10 this year.
Good Lord. Okay.
Wild.
So you have 3 boys. You didn't have a predominant, consistent male figure in your life throughout the years, and here you are now navigating the waters of what it means to be a good dad, and to show these boys a life that they otherwise could have had a much different experience growing up. Like, how do you? And I've had this conversation in other podcast episodes where we talk about who defines what a good dad is, right? But let me ask you, given your circumstances, your situation, everything that you've gone through, every person who's come and gone or stayed, whatever, how have you been able to determine whether or not you are still on par with the course? Like, how do you measure your own success as a father?
So let me say this first. So yeah, Preston, 9 gonna be 10. Jeremiah is he's up 7 going on 8, and Kriston is 6 going on 7. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Kajim, right? Just turned 19, gonna be 20 this year. Raised Kajim since he was a little boy. But to directly answer the question, I don't. I I don't know if I'm on par. And if I'm going to be perfectly honest, from a broken place,
Yeah.
80 to 85% of the time, I feel like I'm failing.
Wow.
I feel like I'm not, I mean, I recognize and I have my days of feeling 100% like, yeah, I'm killing this dad thing, like I'm
Yeah.
doing it. But more often than not, I feel like it's not working. And a lot of that just comes from, I think, that broken place of not having that validation and not having something to directly compare it to for certain moments. So, in moments where I've taught my son to do something, one of them to do something, okay, yeah, the bike,
Yeah.
you know, where moments where I had that conversation with him that was real deep. Learn to drive the car. Yeah, all right, good. Or I got that advice from such and such. But then there's some random moments where it's like things happen, and it's like you've done it. But did I do it? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I take and what I say to and more a lot of these conversations with Kajim more so because he's older. I say to him, like, your successes, your wins are how I measure your victories are how I measure my wins. Um, and it might be bad practice to do it that way because people always say, well, no, you have to kind of find your own space, and I do, but sometimes it's difficult. It is hard to say that I've won or I've done this thing right and I guess I have to wait to see how it turns out. Now, for a lot of the other young men in my that I've had under
Tutelage.
my tutelage, right, for many years, I've had many, yeah, I can say that all of them are doing great things, like all of them. I cannot actually put my hand on any one of them to say that they're not out there killing it right now. And
Yeah.
that's not to give myself a boost up or to tap myself on the shoulder and say, great job. It's just, I thank God for the opportunity and privilege because some of those experiences help shape what I'm able to do now for my own boys, to give them certain knowledge and experiences. And, you know, I I don't know, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. But am I killing it? Am I doing it? It doesn't always feel that way.
And I can understand that. I think as a fellow dad, I think we all kind of have that same thought process. Like,
Yeah.
am I really doing this thing? There are moments where I even like find the things that I didn't like about my dad and my upbringing with him. I find myself doing them as well, and I'm like, damn it.
Mm.
I think a lot of times as men who are seeking to be good dads, I think that we hold ourselves to a much higher level of accountability. Then sometimes is warranted, if I'm being honest with you. Like there's sometimes there's certain things that I do, right? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, at the forefront of my mind, I'm like, bro, you messed up. Like, that's not something a good dad would do. Like, you lost your patience, you yelled at the kids, whatever. Like, you messed up, bro. You're a terrible father. And I literally like beat myself down. In the back of my head, though, there's like this tiny thought that's like competing to say, no, 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 it's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, bro, this is one bad moment out of a slew of a million good moments. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Give yourself some grace. And I can't in those moments. Yeah, and there's always that voice in the back of my head, like, dude, you're fine. Like, and not to toot my own horn or anything about that nature, but there are times I have these thoughts. I'm like, look, dude, if your dad did half of what you're doing right now, you wouldn't even be having this podcast, if we're being honest. Because this has been a form of therapy for me to work through some of my thoughts on my own relationship with my
Right.
dad, and
Right.
and I'm sure other people as well, when they listen or when they're on here as well, it's the same thing for them. Like, it's a chance to talk about some of these things.
Right. Jeremiah, the other day we were at church, and Jeremiah loved my boy to death, but he just cries. He just cries. He'll wake up in the morning and cry. He cries a
Very
lot.
sensitive.
Yeah, but he just cries, and he's my louder child. Like he exclaims. He's very no, don't kill me in the game. He's like keep your voice down.
Very animated.
Very, very animated. Very animated. And I love that about him because he is who he is out loud. And as much as it drives me crazy sometimes, I spend a lot of time defending him when it comes to anybody else. Leave him alone. Let him be him.
Yeah.
Just leave him. He'll figure it out. He'll balance, And he did something and he just started crying. And he was crying and he cried. And like I threw something at him. I thought it was like a shoe or something. I was like, just stop it. It missed him. But like the moment I threw it, I felt instantly guilty because I let my temper get the best of me,
Yeah.
right? And like, when I went to him like later on to try and say, hey, look, I didn't mean to do that, he kind of like shuddered. And man, that feeling,
broke your heart.
it sure did. It did. And so I prayed and I said, God, I need more patience with these kids. And it's funny because I lose my patience and my temper sometimes with the kids for nothing, but then there are people out there who low key like abuse me, right? And I give them grace. And it's like, no, I need to apply this at home. I need to be more who they need me to be, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And I fight for mine. I fight for mine. I tell people all the time in school, they know, if something happens, you find these kids, you make sure you get them out first. I just, because I'm that, and, Preston came up the other day and said that, hey, this teacher was not nice to me. Like she yelled at me. It's like, she yelled at you. Why? And I'm not the type to fly off the handle just because my kid said so. But I'm going to go down there and find out what happened. Hey, what's going on? And it didn't, ma'am, I'm not jumping down your throat. I'm asking what happened. Well, the children can't always tell you. Yes, he can. He can always come to me and tell me anything he wants to tell me about something that he experienced and how someone made him feel. And I am going to follow up and investigate. I mean, whether you appreciate the fact that I'm doing it or not is irrelevant, but I'm going to do that because it's what he needs from me in this moment.
Yeah.
And you don't have to like it, but I'm asking you the questions. And if I can't get the answers from you, then you're going to make me want to go and take other steps, which I don't want to do that. Let's just have a conversation, just explain to me what happened, because perhaps, and honestly, Preston was probably wrong, whatever the circumstance was, but I'm still my job to vet it.
For sure.
Sure. And so we have these instances and these moments where that things happen. And so how do you know, I don't know. My thing is just being there for them as much as I can possibly be there for them until, as long as I'm on this earth, if they need me to be somewhere, I'm gonna be there. That's
Yeah.
that's my plan. That's what I want to do. That's my intent. I want to leave a legacy for them, something they can follow. So if you decide that this is what you want to do, the opportunities will be there for you. You can. A lot of my life has changed a lot over the last couple of years. We're not necessarily doing things where we're accustomed to doing things in my house, but I have learned so much in this period, in this time. I have learned, even with my children and my wife, how to be different and how to take a step back and just recognize, like, yo, this is what I have right in front of me. Can't miss it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because, when I was my former business, it really ate up a lot of my time, a lot of my energy. And like now, yeah, just gotta figure it out. I'm tired now for different reasons. I'm just,
Yeah, for sure.
being super dad, like it was low key sometimes. But yeah.
Look, man, I totally get it. It's funny. It's interesting, really. How the kids have helped us to grow up, I think.
Yes.
It's ironic, right? Like, I remember when my firstborn was maybe a year and a half, 2 years old, something like that. And we were home. I was off that day. I was still working for the man at that time. And yeah, so we were home, and I woke up early to get some work done. He woke up early too to get some work done, apparently.
Yeah.
And so I was in the room, I'm on the computer, and he comes in and he's like bugging me. He's like, hey, daddy, or daddy, whatever he's saying. And I was like, look, I just got to finish this thing and then I'll be out there. All right. He leaves. I continue working. I didn't have lots to do today. I knew I was going to wake up, get this thing done, and I'd be done for the day. He left. He comes back 15 minutes later on the same thing. Hey, daddy, can we get whatever? And I was like, look, Amari, I need you to go chill. I need 15 minutes, all right? He goes, and walked away, like, his typical thing. So I stopped working for a quick sec to think. And I was just like, yo, does he not understand that, like, if he was just patient with me, that he would get everything he's asking for and more in a time frame that maybe that doesn't suit him, but it's the time frame that daddy has. And if you were patient enough to wait and not interrupt me and further delay the blessing that I'm trying to give you, then you would just chill if you just knew what was around the corner.
Preach, preacher.
And it's those, I've had so many of those moments as a father of, like, the kids doing something, me saying something to them, and like sticking my foot in my mouth, like, instantly. Like, one, from a spiritual standpoint, obviously, right? It's like, yo, God kind of says the same thing to you all the time. And I'm just like, oh, dang. Like, it hits home. It's like, ugh. And it wasn't until having kids that I truly understood, one, the depths of God's love for me specifically, especially as a father. But the other thing that I've also gained from raising kids, or at least trying to raise kids, is understanding my parents' perspective even more. Especially because as a young man who's come to terms with, like, yo, my dad's here, but he's not here. And coming to terms with that and how he was absent for the first 8 or 9 years of my life because of work purposes. Like, he was back and forth. He'd, go to New York for 6 months worth of work, come back for 2 weeks, and then he's gone again. So I built up a lot of animosity towards him. And once I had my first, my walls started coming down just a little bit. And by the time I had my second one, I was like, man, I get it now.
Yeah.
He was literally just a kid trying to figure it out himself.
Yeah.
And I had to show him more grace.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it helped me to remind myself, you need to show yourself more grace as well.
Right.
Because you are equally just the same kid trying to figure this out.
Right.
And, like, the kids ultimately have the final say in whether or not they had a good father. Right. But you know what, man? I started this podcast because I wanted to own that title.
Right.
And it does two things. One, gives myself credit for a change instead of beating myself up all the time. It shows me, hey, look, no, you are a damn good dad. Like, think about just how you maneuver, what you do for your kids, how you put them first, how you show up.
Right.
You are a damn good dad, right? And the second thing was, in starting this podcast was also to help other people recognize that as well. And then like, hey, look, if I'm not, this is a great way to hold me accountable
Right.
for being that guy.
So let me say this.
Yeah.
You made a valid point, and I want to, because we talked about resentment or the animosity rather, right?
Yeah.
You made a valid point, but I'm not sure that you caught what you said.
Hey, talk to me, man. That's what it's for. I'm just the host. I'm here to grow too.
So you said that, you're a kid trying to figure this out with your kids.
Yeah.
And you said you recognize that, he was just a kid trying to figure it out too. So in that, is there room for you to recognize that he was a kid trying to figure it out? And in his mind, the best way to provide and do for my family was to be away for that period of time. It may not have been what you needed or what you wanted at that time.
Sure.
But the way I see it, and especially when talking about the situation with my dad, right? Him not being there allowed me to experience it, to grow, to be the person I am today.
Yeah.
Because perhaps, maybe, what you have to look at is you missed the parts where he was too tired, too exhausted, and he was frustrated. And he would lash out at you because he had a bad day at work, because he wasn't necessarily there for it.
Yeah.
Those 2 weeks that he was there, you probably got, though he made it, you probably got the
best of him.
The best of
point.
him.
Yeah.
Right? Because he was more rested and could actually give you some attention.
Or
right?
just knew that he was going away again shortly, so make the most of it. Yeah.
Right. As opposed to getting, the other side of him that maybe you would have hated. Right? And so look at it from the perspective that God made it so that you were able to survive. Because that's what we're really talking about here.
For sure.
You were able to survive, and you made it to this moment and to this place right here to sit in this meeting and have that conversation, right, with someone who understands more about your story than maybe the average person does. And so perhaps, though Imari came to you for that time and wanted that 15 minutes, that moment, you didn't necessarily have to experience that as a kid, perhaps.
Yeah.
Right? Because you didn't have to try and stop your dad while he was working, because for those 2 weeks or 3 weeks he was there.
I slightly disagree on that last part.
I hear you.
Because when he was leaving, it was a moment.
No,
you know what I mean?
I get you.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is, I'm just drawing a comparison.
No, you're right.
Between the two circumstances, right? And you're not wrong in any way, shape, or form, right? I just saying that, like, look at the brighter side of it, right?
Yeah.
And again, I have to look at me, and I know it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you're saying that now, but I have to look at it like this. Like, when I first got married, one of the things my wife absolutely could not stand was how much I worked. And
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
I'd work 18 hours a day. I mean, without even blinking.
I've seen you work 26 before.
I'm just saying, I've literally, when I used to write curriculum back in the day, man, I would sit down for 3 days and work on one curriculum. And I just, like, that was how I worked. I pushed through. But when I did have fun, I had fun. But I was always on call, always at work, always doing something that required my energy and attention. That was before I had kids, of course, right? But my wife, it drove her crazy.
Yep.
In the
I remember
beginning.
that.
Oh my God, drove her crazy.
I remember.
And it wasn't until she came to start working with me, she realized, you're actually like doing stuff all day. I was like, yeah.
You thought I was just here chilling, and
Just
the money
chilling all day,
just
feet on the
shows
desk,
up in our
right?
account.
And yeah, and so it was a part of, who I became and my successes or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know what I would trade what I have now. It's rough now. Very rough, right? Because, life is very different. But to be home at 3 o'clock, when I pick my children up at 3 o'clock, and to be able to drive home and to be there and not have to leave to go back to work.
Yeah.
It's magical.
So, and that's a good segue, because I want to end this episode. We talked about a lot of heavy stuff today. There was a point in time I actually got a little emotional when you were talking, and I was just like, dang, bro, like, I know there's going to be an episode where I get too emotional.
Oh, I'm holding it together right now. I want you to understand that. I mean, when we cut these cameras off. because I'm on the brink.
Because that's all right. That's all right. All right. So
Yeah.
we're gonna end on a good note. We're gonna end on a good note.
Yes, please.
Because trust me, like I made a pat to myself. I was like, bro, look, we can't cry on camera. Like we gotta keep it together.
You know,
but that's all right though. Like
I cry when the wind blows, but you know.
That's all right though. I want this to be a
Jeremiah
safe
got it
space.
from me.
Is that what? And then you're upset with him. That's
I know,
funny.
right? That's wild. But
I want this to be a safe space.
of course,
For
always,
not just like, okay, it's safe, like you're not going to get judged. No, I want you to feel comfortable. Anyone who sits in that chair, I want them to feel comfortable saying, hey, look, I'm sharing with you some of the deepest, darkest like experiences that have affected me. And I want you to feel comfortable like, hey, look, if I need to cry, if I need to walk away for a minute, like this is what this is for.
Yeah.
This is what this podcast is all about. I want to help other people. I want to help others in my situation. I want to help others whose situation I can't relate to, but someone in this chair can. And for them to be able to share and say, oh man, I'm not the only one who went through that. And so this is what it's all about. It's like bridging the gap and breaking down like walls and boundaries to be able to say, hey, look, we can connect now and share.
Right.
In the effort to grow. Like we're not, and I said this to you off camera before we started. If you want to go far, you go together.
Yeah.
And this is like full circle, right? So here's where I want to end. I want to land on this, man. We've talked about a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of sensitive stuff. I want you to tell me what has been the greatest joy about being a dad.
See, now you're gonna bring these tears, right? You're working hard for these tears.
I wasn't trying to, but whatever it means for you, man. Like, what's been the thing that you like, man? You know what? All the heartache and headache that I have to go through with these kids, this is worth it because of this.
I always say that. I meet people all the time who say that their dad they don't hear "I love you" from their parents, especially their dads.
Yeah.
I think I tell my kids I love them at least maybe 4 or 5 times a day, to the point where Kajim will tell you that's nauseating.
Yeah.
Right.
Same. They get tired of it.
So my biggest thing, what I always say, is that I just want love. I just want to feel loved. And when we talked about accomplishments earlier, it is the love that makes you feel accomplished. And so those random moments where I'm just watching TV, or I'm just laying down, or, and in particular, I remember one particular time I was sleeping, and I think it was Kristan. He just came and he laid in the bed next to me, and he says, "Daddy." I said, "What's wrong?" He says, I can't remember what he said. And I was like, "Okay." And I want to lay down. I want to lay down with you. I said, "Okay, it's fine." And he put his hand on my face and was like, "Daddy, I love you." I'm like, okay. It's like, "I love you too."
I'm not crying. You are.
Shut up. I was like, "I love you." And he said, "Daddy, are you okay?" No, Preston is good for that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just be sitting down. I have my moments where I just be sitting down. The world around me is just life. Life is just life. And
Yeah.
Preston, "Daddy, are you okay?" "Yeah, Preston, I'm fine." "Daddy, are you okay? What's wrong?" "Preston, I'm good." He said, "Come give me a hug." I was like, "Oh my God." And Jeremiah is good for a hug, man. Jeremiah, "Can I have a hug, please?" It's like those moments, Kajim will sometimes like, "You good?" And he's older, so
Yeah, I was going to say that's a typical 19-year-old.
I can really just be like, he was like, "No, I'm not okay." He's like, "What's wrong?" And I can talk to him, right? And he'll sometimes say things back to me. It's usually like things I've given to him. And I'm saying that he's giving back. And it's like,
Okay.
those moments. On the outside, and it's not a father moment per se, but one of the young men that I've mentored, he called me. And I'll save that one.
Okay.
I'll save that one. But straight and plain, when my kids show me the most purest form of love, yeah.
I want you to take note of that moment specifically, and remember that when you have those days of self-doubt about not being a good dad.
Yeah.
Because that moment is a direct byproduct of the experience that you've given these kids. So when you have those rough moments and those days of feeling like, man, I'm not dadding the way I need to, remember that moment, because that's literally because of everything you've done for these kids that led them to that moment. So they got to learn that from somewhere.
Yeah.
So
This is a proud moment for me too.
this is a problem.
Proud moment for me too.
Okay, what?
Like you.
Me?
Yeah. You.
Oh, okay, we going there. All right.
You. So like, I appreciate that you recognize who you are. I appreciate that you see yourself, and I appreciate that you have recognized and see yourself so much that you can pour something back into someone else, whether it's me or anybody else. I recognize that you are an amazing dad, and I recognize that you sometimes just need to hear it. You're awesome. Hold it together.
Oh yeah, no, I am for sure. I'm
Hold it down.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, God sees you.
Yeah.
He recognizes you. He knows who you are, and he's going to give you the strength and the grace to run this race with them, even if you have to carry them on your back.
Oh yeah.
Don't give up. Keep fixing you and keep doing what you have to do. I love you very much, my boy.
I love you too, man. I appreciate you. Almost made it to the end.
Hey, I had to repay you.
Nah, man. Look, dude, like seriously,
That tear sat right here. And I was like, I'm not gonna wipe it. I'm
I was
not
like,
gonna wipe it.
because if I wipe it, then it's like acknowledging that it's real. But no, man, seriously, like kudos to you. I want you to understand that, like, you know, I don't take our relationship very lightly. If anybody ever asked me when we have these conversations about like fathering from a broken place and all that stuff, right? I think about you immediately. You were I won't say you were the first, but you were like the main example of a husband and a father that I was able to experience, outside of my dad, obviously, right? And I think that like even when I told people I was engaged and I had proposed and all that other stuff, all the men in my life, I got so much negative from them.
Yeah.
Like, dude, your life is over, or big mistake, or good luck with that, you know? And you were one of the few people who had encouraged me. You told me the truth. Hey, this is not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And you know, you've I don't know if I'm allowed to say this out loud, but you've saved my marriage more often than you realized. And even before, like, I was engaged, or even before I was dating her, like just the knowledge and wisdom and experience that you've imparted on me over the years, it goes a long way. And yeah, man, I think you inspired a lot of what I'm doing now, especially with this podcast.
Yeah.
You passing that on to me, I want to be able to do that for others as well. So in some regards, this is your legacy too, man.
Stress. Boy, I tell you, I give God all the honor, glory, and praise. It's because of him. And yeah, I hopefully soon will start my own podcast. So
hey, whenever you're ready, man. Shameless plug. We do podcasts here at the studio.
no shameless plug.
No, man.
You plug.
No, all day. We do podcasts. If you have a podcast idea, we definitely want to work with you and help you with that. We actually have a pretty sweet deal and setup going with people who are looking to start podcasts and don't necessarily have the resources or the know-how to get it done. So contact us for sure. But Patrick, like, seriously, man, I'm so grateful to have you today. I'm glad that things worked out the way they did, and that you were able to stop in and share some of your wisdom and your story with us. And I just hope that other people are blessed, and some dad out there is watching this episode and saying to themselves, like, wow, all right, like, there's hope for me. I'm not the only one who has bad days too.
Yeah.
And that doesn't define me as a dad, though, in that one moment.
Yeah.
So,
and let me say this.
Yeah.
If you're a young man out there, especially if you're in that teenage phase going into your adult phase, let me say this to you. Tell your dad what it is that he means to you. Good, bad, or indifferent. You know, if it's bad, take it easy, right? Because you don't know what he's struggling with. But especially if you have a good dad, don't hesitate to tell him. Let him know you love him. Tell him he's doing a great job. And let him know that you appreciate him. I guarantee you, he won't regret it.
That's good advice.
Yep.
Patrick, man, thank you. I appreciate you, brother.
Much love.
All right, man. That's a wrap, bro.